This is the video that a lot of you have been waiting for, even if you don't exactly know that you've been waiting for it. How to beat Trump in 2020. I'm going to try not to be so long-winded because I know there's an attention span here. I know that there's a lot of people out there who are still having Trump election PTSD. How did this happen? How did this man get elected president? There's a lot of people with different theories. The entire country is racist, but that doesn't give you a whole lot because you've got more minorities that voted for Trump than voted for Mitt Romney in 2012. And you've got a lot of policies that typically are popular with minorities that are happening under this president. So there's a good reason for them to support him. But if you want to know how to beat Trump in 2020, this is what this video is about. The very first thing that you're going to have to do if you want to beat Trump is understand how he got elected. Anyone who's ever heard the term vote your pocketbook, that's how he got elected. Now, people who vote their emotions, they assume that other people vote their emotions. So what happens is if you voted against Trump because you feel like he's racist and you never even paid any attention to what his economic policies were, what his social policies were, or anything like that, then you're going to assume that everybody else voted their emotions as well. So you're going to assume that they're voting based on what you see as being racist. Okay. The first thing you're going to have to understand is that those people didn't vote on their emotions. They voted on their pocketbook. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to vote for Trump in 2020. I'm telling you how to beat him. All of these people who have announced that they're running for the Democratic nomination in 2020, none of these people can beat Trump. You guys, you have to find someone who is your emotional equivalent of Trump if you want to vote emotional. And then you have to have someone who can also push the economic, sort of vote your pocketbook kind of candidate for the people who voted for Trump. And you cannot do that with a social justice warrior. You cannot do that putting forth someone just because they're a minority. You cannot do that by putting forward someone who just happens to be a woman. You cannot beat Trump with that kind of candidate. It's not going to happen. It is not possible. So I always say, if you want to be able to beat someone, I don't know how many people play chess or poker. These are games where in order to win, you have to be able to kind of understand how the other people think. You're going to try to read their facial expressions, read their body language, figure out their strategy. Politics is not that complicated. Most people are voting either on some feeling or some issue. Some people are one issue voters. Some people are just general economic voters. Some people vote based on feeling a connection to that person. But if you want to win a presidency, for those of you who know how that election process works, you have to put forth a candidate that other people will vote for the reasons they vote for them. And you vote for them for the reasons that you vote for them. That's one of the reasons that Barack Obama got elected. Now, my personal opinion is that he didn't do what he said he was going to do, but that's still how he got elected. He appealed to the emotions of people who are saying, you know what, this guy talks smooth, he's got a beautiful family, he's our first black president, and I would be proud to have him as that. He was against the war. He's talking about economic policies that I believe in. He wants to do healthcare, reform that I believe in. These are the things that he talked about, and that's how he got elected. He talked about hope. He talked about changing how business is done in Washington, and let's face it, no one likes how business is done in Washington. Nobody likes it. So he talked about the things that push both the emotional buttons and the economic buttons of the people who were voting for him. And people don't realize that the very same people who voted for Barack Obama are the ones that turned around and voted for Trump, because they voted for Barack Obama a lot on the emotions and on some other economic principles, and they felt let down by him. They didn't feel let down by him because he made the country more brown. They didn't feel let down by him because he was brown. That doesn't make sense. And you have to live an evidence-based life. You have to follow a logical set of steps and come to a conclusion that makes sense. If you just are constantly voting on pure emotions, like, emotions don't make sense. We've long ago stopped trying to make emotions, for the most part, make sense. Some people are very emotional about one issue and don't care less about another issue. We still don't know what makes a person fall in love with one person and not the next person standing by them. What makes someone that person that you cannot wait to see again, that you cannot stop thinking about, and the person that you meet and never give a second thought? We don't really know how that works. We don't know what that is. So emotions are too unpredictable for you to have everyone voting each on their own emotion. So you have to have someone who's got mass appeal, because Obama was mostly an emotional pick. Trump was mostly an economic pick. And you know that people are going to pick based on where they're suffering the most. You could argue that some of the things that happened under the Bush administration, and by the way, for people who think I'm some hardcore Republican, I didn't like Bush. I did not think he was a good president. I didn't like all the wars. I didn't, he did a lot of things that I didn't like in terms of big spending and more debt. I didn't like him. So I was ready for something new by the time Obama came around. I grant you I was disappointed, but I was still ready for something new. And at that point, most people, I think, were ready to try something new. You come forward and you've got, if this was another country and you had a man who's president and a couple of terms later, his son is president. And then you have this other man who's president. And a few, terms later, his wife is president. We would call that country a dynasty and corrupt and all keeping it all in the small inner circle. So there was a lot of things that people kind of looked at and said, like, why are we doing that? And this is the same thing that we criticize other countries for doing. So the first thing that you have to do if you want to beat Trump in 2020 is you have to get rid of all of the career politicians. Career politician is not going to beat Trump. Kamala Harris is the most career politician ever. She takes no political risk whatsoever. Cory Booker's a little bit better, but if you dig into his past, you're going to find out that he's got baggage. And he's too much like Barack Obama, sans the beautiful family, as far as I know. And this is no insult to Cory Booker. Just as far as I know, he's not married and doesn't have any children. And that's an optic Americans love. Let's just be honest. It's an optic Americans love. So he's got his own issues. I don't know a whole lot about him politically, but I do know that he supported the Prison Reform Act, and Kamala Harris did not. Elizabeth Warren, no. She's not going to. Joe Biden definitely is not going to. I'm going to make a whole separate video on Joe Biden. I doubt he'll even run. But he's not going to make it either. Beto O'Rourke probably has the best chance, but because he's so smooth, he's too Obama. People are going to feel like they were conned by Obama. You can disagree with it. You can call it racist. You can call it whatever you want. People did not feel like they got what they were hoping for. Hope and change. They didn't feel like they got that. And I bring up Ross Perot again because Ross Perot was a preview. Those of you who don't know, Ross Perot ran against Clinton his first term, and he ran as a third-party candidate. I'm not going to go into all of the details of what happened with that. If you're interested, I would suggest that you go look it up if you like researching politics. He got, I believe, 19 or 20% of the vote, which is extraordinary for a third-party candidate in the general election of a presidential election. I don't remember it happening any other time in my history. Most third-party candidates will be lucky if they get 2 or 3%. But he got about 19%, and he was a preview because he was not the same personality as Trump, but he brought to the table the same things that Trump did, which was he was talking plain, simple economics. He was funny looking. He talked funny. And even though he didn't use the kind of language and things like that Trump uses, he was not the kind of polished, well-handled, well-prepared politician that we were used to. But he talked plain, simple economics. And at the end of the day, emotions don't feed your children. They do not send them to college. They do not pay your mortgage or your car note. Have you ever seen those shows where somebody is sitting and they're crying to the person that's getting ready to repossess their car, or they're crying and begging to the person that's getting ready to write them a parking ticket, and they're like, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, we have to write you this ticket because we started writing it already. Emotions don't pay your bills. So you can feel really, really good about a candidate, but there's always going to be a huge number of people out there, huge number of people, that because their emotional attachment to a candidate is different than yours, you're going to think you have the right candidate, and it won't be. That's what happened. One of the things that happened with Hillary Clinton, I argue she's a very flawed candidate, more flawed than most people know, because she was protected by the media. But there was a lot of people who hated her. So it wasn't enough that she was going to be the first woman president. That wasn't enough. If that had been enough, Bernie Sanders wouldn't have been able to come along and sort of kick her in the butt the way that he did. That wasn't enough. People wanted some kind of economic message. You know, I disagree with almost every policy that Bernie Sanders had, but I believe he was a real, authentic candidate that told an economic story that people wanted to hear, regardless of whether or not it's possible. People wanting free education, free college, that's an economic thing. They're not thinking about whether it's feasible and who's going to actually pay for it. They just don't want to graduate from college with $60,000 in debt, nor should they have to. And that also is a whole nother video that I'm going to talk about one day. So you have to understand what people are reacting to and what people are responding to. And these candidates that are out there right now, they're not trying to sell you an economic policy that they actually intend to keep. They're trying to sell you an economic policy that they think you'll buy. And if you put somebody forward like that, what you're going to have is Trump destroys them in the debates, because Trump knows his economics. You can say what you want to about his emotional appeal or lack thereof. If you think he's racist or not, you can say what you want. He knows his economics. And people, you need to stop turning off the television and groaning and grunting and rolling your eyes every time you see him come on. Have you people not ever heard the term know your enemy? If you think Trump is your enemy, you better damn well know what he's doing. You need to know what he's telling other people to make them support him. Stop putting yourself in a cocoon and putting yourself in a little box off to the side on your own, and you think that you're going to pick someone that you want to be president when you don't even know why the people who picked this one picked him. Know your enemy. Sometimes you get to know your enemy and you find out they're not your enemy at all. That's how people stopped hating Black people or stopped hating people of different races. It's really difficult to hate someone if you actually know them and like them. And I'm not saying that you would like Donald Trump if you got to know him, but I'm saying that if you don't know your enemy, you have no chance of beating your enemy. I am a huge MMA fan. Huge MMA fan. I don't even know how that happened. But one of the things that I notice is there are some athletes that will be really, really good at what they do. Conor McGregor is a perfect example of that for those of you who know him. He hits hard, he's fast, he can move out of the way, he can take a pretty good punch as well. But when it goes to the ground, he can't do that. He can't win. He got beat by Nate Diaz on the ground. He got beat horribly by I forget the guy from Kazakhstan, or what's his name, Nurmagomedov. He got beat horribly by him. So he probably knew his enemy. He's a very hardworking athlete as far as I could tell, but not good enough. He didn't know him good enough, and he hadn't studied him and had a chance to train for him long enough to beat someone at their own game who is the best at their game. Trump is the best at his game. That's why these people weren't at his rallies because they were racist. If you had listened to any of those rallies, you would know that. So even though we don't know, for those of you who don't know, probably a lot, the State of the Union address has been postponed. I invite you again to plan to be there. The first step in beating your enemy is knowing your enemy. And when you leave there, not only will you know your enemy, if Trump is, and he might be, I don't know, you will also know actually who is your enemy, because there may be people that you're just glad they're running because they're the right color, and you don't even know what their voting record is. People, stop it. A lot of people don't know that Kamala Harris voted against this prison reform bill. It gives people who are serving sentences, the mandatory sentences for crack, a chance to get a reduction if they're a nonviolent offender. Why would she vote against that? I don't know why she voted against it. Do you? I'm not going to vote for her. But I would want to know, because I would use that against her if I was trying to get someone to vote against her. How are you going to get somebody to vote against Trump if you don't even know what he's supporting and what he's putting forward? You just have decided because somebody told you that racism is the only appeal that he has. You all know better than that. I have to believe that you know better than that. This country is not that racist. Every country on the planet, almost, not every, had slavery of some kind, had some kind of oppressed minority in their group. In one country, it was the short people. In other countries, it's religious, a different religion. Everybody has had slavery and oppression and hardships and what do you call it, where, you know, they don't get along. We're not unique in that. And so people work side by side with each other. The reason, listen, people call me Uncle Tom, house nigger, all those kinds of things. I don't really care about the name, but I will tell you one thing. The reason there was so many house niggers is because people were starting to have emotional feelings and connections for their slaves. Now, it's dysfunctional, but so is a man who beats his wife, or a woman who beats her husband. And I have personal experience with that, so I am not singling anybody out. It's dysfunctional. It's not a good, healthy situation, but that doesn't mean that they don't love each other. They just need to learn new coping tools. So there was a lot of people just because of proximity. Like, how do you sit down? You start having a conversation. You realize you have something in common. You start talking about your day. And next thing you know, you cannot help who that person is that you cannot wait to see again. And when someone had a relationship with the slave, whether they called it that or not, and that was their child that was mixed with the masters and the slaves, they didn't want them out there having to work hard and having to be in that same situation. That's how they became house Negroes, because somebody cared about them a little bit more. And that's the same thing that happens with us from in day-to-day society. Every time somebody says something bad to you and they happen to be a different race, that doesn't mean they hate all Black people. Stop. So, you know, this has gone way long enough, but once again, I invite you guys, take the time out, come to the State of the Union address. I will keep you updated on when it is, and just take the first step in how you beat Trump. If you want to beat him, know your enemy. Thank you for listening. Please comment, please share, please engage, please give me your feedback. I want to hear all of it. I respond to all of it as best I can. I'm never dodging, so just remember that. Keep bumping it up, sending it again. I'm doing the best that I can. All right, thanks everybody.